They tried to erase me from the will, the ranch, and their version of love, but my grandfather left behind more than money. He left a map, and I followed it straight into the storm that would uncover every secret they buried. The air inside the law office felt too still, like even the dust was holding its breath. I sat rigid in a high-backed leather chair, surrounded by mahogany walls and polished furniture that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 60s. The will reading had started 15 minutes ago, but the words didn't start hurting until Vanessa smiled. The lawyer, Mr. Harold Keene, handed her a crisp envelope, thick with checks and legal affirmations. To Vanessa Whitman, he said, a trust of $10 million, established per the wishes of Walter R. Whitman. Vanessa's smile deepened, perfect teeth gleaming. My parents clapped politely, already moving toward her in a congratulatory huddle. Then they turned to me. Go earn your own, my father said smoothly, like it was a punchline he'd been waiting to deliver. My mother gave a practiced, pitying shrug. You'll be fine, Claire. You always land on your feet. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just stared at the table, glossy and dark, reflecting the soft amber light from the chandelier above. The surface blurred as I forced my breath to stay even, my pulse thudding in my ears. And then a shift. A figure at the far end of the table stood. He hadn't spoken until now, a quiet man in a gray suit whose presence I had barely noticed. There's one more document, he said, voice steady. Everyone turned. The man produced a worn envelope, soft at the corners, the kind that looked like it had traveled across time. My grandfather's handwriting. My mother's smile disappeared. My father's hand twitched on the table. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. What is this? My father asked. A personal addendum, the man said, written and witnessed before Mr. Whitman's death. It was to be read only after the primary will. Mr. Keene, now visibly interested, took the envelope, examined the seal and nodded. It's authentic. He opened it with the reverence of someone unwrapping history. Inside was a short letter and instructions. To be read only in the presence of Claire Whitman. My mother stiffened. She's in the room, she said quickly. Mr. Keene looked up. Alone? Vanessa laughed, short and mean. Oh, come on. This is ridiculous. Please, Mr. Keene said. Per the legal instructions, I must ask the rest of you to wait outside. My father opened his mouth to protest, but Grandma, who until then had sat in quiet mourning, suddenly stood. Do as he says, she commanded. Her voice silenced the room. With a collection of glares, sighs and flared nostrils, they filed out. And suddenly, it was just me, Mr. Keene, and the envelope. He unfolded the letter carefully. I watched his eyes move over the page before he began to read aloud. Claire, if this letter finds you, then I am gone. But I'm not far. Not really. You always asked the right questions, not just the ones people liked, but the ones that made them think. It scared them. Even when they smiled at you, I saw it. And I saw you. You were never invisible to me. There is a property on the outskirts of Charleston, you know the one. The old ranch. It isn't just a ranch. Go there. You'll find the rest. But more than that, you'll find what they tried to keep from you. You deserve to know. Love always, Grandpa. I didn't realize I was crying until a single drop hit the table. Mr. Keene handed me a separate key, attached to a rusted tag marked LC317. That key opens the south entrance to the research annex, he said. I looked up. Research annex. He smiled faintly. Walter Whitman built more than a legacy. He built something living. He wanted you to find it. Driving to Charleston felt like reverse time travel. The highways I'd escaped on years ago stretched back like faded ribbons, drawing me toward a past I thought I'd buried. But my grandfather had left me a trail, and I wasn't about to ignore it. When I arrived, the gravel crunched under my boots, too loud in the silence. The ranch looked the same: weathered siding, crooked mailbox, magnolia trees leaning like they always had, but the air felt off. I knocked. The door opened with a creak. So you finally decided to show up, my grandmother said. She looked older. Then I remembered, her face sharper, her arms folded with enough steel to reinforce a bridge. Grandma, they told me you were too busy, that you didn't care, that you had a new life. Her voice cracked, but her eyes did not. I tried to call. I said, I came by in March. Vanessa told me no one was home. Her brows drew together. We were here every day. She disappeared into the house. I followed. Inside, the air was thick, like the house itself was holding its breath. She returned holding a worn leather notepad. This is the number he kept calling. I looked. My stomach dropped. This isn't my number. It's not even close. They told us you changed it, she whispered. That you didn't want to be found. They lied. They made sure I couldn't be found. Her hand trembled. She sat slowly, like the truth was too heavy. The funeral, I whispered. They told me it was at noon. I got there and it was empty. It was at 9, she said. They told everyone you didn't care. I sat beside her, breath shallow. I didn't know. She nodded. We know that now. That's what matters. We know. A long silence passed, then she stood, walked to the rotary phone and dialed. Betty, get Jacob and Vanessa. Come to the ranch. 1 hour. No excuses. The lawyer's coming too. She hung up. Your grandfather left something else. Something to be read only when they were all in the room. I sat at the kitchen table waiting, outside. The wind whispered through the trees, and I knew. Whatever was in that final letter, whatever storm Grandpa had left behind was about to break the sky open. The lawyer's voice still echoed in the room when Vanessa stormed out, followed by the controlled panic of my parents. But inside me, the storm had just started, not of rage or triumph, but of reckoning of every moment that had been stolen, every lie fed to me with a smile, every silence shaped like abandonment. Grandma and I sat in the silence that followed, the room heavy with all that had been unspoken for too long. Then, slowly, she stood. Come with me, she said. She led me to Grandpa's study. I hadn't been inside since I was a child, since he used to let me play with the paperweight that looked like the oath suspended in glass, or leaf through old journals he insisted were more precious than money. The room smelled like cedar and old ink. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a smaller manila envelope. He left this too, she said, handing it to me. It was meant for after the reading. I unfolded the contents. A map, a set of keys, and a photograph of me at 10 years old, standing next to my first science fair project about honeybee communication. On the back of the photo, in his handwriting, Claire's lab. Someday. The address was in Charleston, Laurel Creek Road. What is this? I whispered. The place he built for you, Grandma said, her voice gentle now. He called it the Annex. Said you'd know what to do when the time came. I drove to Charleston the next morning. The address led to a stretch of land on the outskirts of town, where civilization gave way to quiet fields. At the end of a gravel path, a barn-like structure stood under an enormous oak tree. It looked nothing like a lab. But when I unlocked the door, light spilled in like a revelation. Inside was magic. Not in the fantastical sense, but in the deliberate, sacred kind of magic you feel when someone has built something with love for you. High tables, pristine lab equipment, shelves of reference books, labeled boxes marked Claire's samples, Claire's projects, even a small kitchenette with a mug that said "Believe in Science." I found my old journal, the one I thought I'd lost in college. It was sitting in the center of the main workbench, protected in a glass case like it was a relic. I laughed. Then I cried. Back at Grandma's, we sat on the porch drinking iced tea. She looked at me over the rim of her glass. You look like him, you know, she said. Not just the eyes. The way you walk into a room, like you already know the answer. That used to drive your father crazy. I smiled faintly. He always said I was too curious. Curiosity isn't a flaw, she said. It's a compass. A week later, I moved into the annex. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post it on social media. I just began. I started with reorganizing the lab. Everything was there, but untouched. Grandpa had created the skeleton. It was up to me to give it breath. By the third week, I reached out to 2 former classmates, Tara and Micah, the only people I knew who still believed science could be human. They arrived with backpacks and open hearts. We set to work immediately. Our first project was small, developing an irrigation system that used atmospheric moisture for rural farming. We called it SkySip. We failed 6 times. But the 7th? It worked. We laughed. We cried. We celebrated with flat soda and peanut butter sandwiches. It felt like a victory. That night, I found a new note inside the NX mailbox, typed, "No signature. You don't deserve any of it." I didn't tell Tara or Micah. I threw it in the compost pile and went back to work. The next week, another note came. Vanessa. Should have had it all, this time. It was in Vanessa's handwriting, but the tone, it wasn't venomous. It felt hollow. I kept the note. The NX grew. So did we. Within 6 months, we had secured 2 grants. We presented at a local symposium. We were featured in a regional science journal. Still, the past loomed. One day, I came back to the NX and found the front door ajar. Nothing was missing, but on the workbench sat another letter. "You were never supposed to matter." It was unsigned. That night, I called Grandma. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "They're afraid, Claire. Not because you took something, but because you didn't need their permission to become something." I clutched the phone, her words like balm over old wounds. 3 months later, the call came from Mr. Keene. "Your parents want a meeting," he said, privately, "at the ranch." I paused. "They claim they want to make amends." I didn't believe that for a second, but I agreed to the meeting. I had one condition. Vanessa had to be there too. They arrived on a Sunday. My father in a linen blazer, my mother in pearls. Vanessa is in muted gray, no makeup. All 3 looked small. We sat in the parlor. Grandma stood by the fireplace like a sentry. My father cleared his throat. "Claire, we regret the misunderstandings." I said nothing. "We were grieving." My mother added, "No." I finally replied, "You were grooming Vanessa to inherit a legacy that wasn't yours to give. And erasing me was easier than understanding me." Vanessa looked down. My father stiffened. "That's unfair." Grandma stepped forward. "What's unfair is lying to your daughter for years," she said. "What's unfair is cutting off her calls, rerouting her letters, rewriting history." My mother turned pale. "You knew," she whispered. "I do." "Now," Grandma said, "and so does Claire. Now say what you came to say." There was a beat of silence. Then Vanessa spoke. "I want to see it," she said. Everyone turned. "The annex, the lab, what you built." I stared at her. Something in her voice sounded real, not rehearsed. "Why?" I asked. "Because I can't fix the past," she said, "but I want to understand the future." I gave her the tour. She didn't flinch, didn't mock, just listened, touched things with reverence. When we reached the kids' corner, drawings of experiments pinned on a wall, she smiled. "They call you Coach V now," I said. She nodded. "And I like it." For the first time, I saw her not as the villain of my story, but as someone trying to escape the same house of mirrors. We weren't sisters the way other people meant it, but maybe we could become something else. 2 women who stopped pretending. 2 women are trying to build truth from the rubble of old lies. The annex didn't look like a laboratory. It looked like a converted barn. And that's exactly what it was. Nestled at the far end of a dusty road off Laurel Creek, it had wide beams, a rusted tin roof, and a pair of double doors that belonged on a horse stable, not a research facility. The first time I saw it, I almost laughed. But then I stepped inside, and the world shifted. Sunlight streamed through glass panels on the east wall, bathing the entire room in a golden haze. High lab tables stood in perfect symmetry. Sleek, untouched equipment shimmered with promised centrifuges, microscopes, smart data tablets, a 3D printer still wrapped in plastic. Shelves lined the back wall, filled with unopened boxes. I stepped closer. They were labeled with my name. In the center of the room was a workbench. On top of it sat a worn notebook, the one I thought I'd lost in college. My childhood journal, the one with bee diagrams, soil moisture experiments, pages warped by lemonade spills, and curiosity. My breath caught in my throat. Grandpa hadn't just built me a lab. He built me a home for my mind. I sank into a nearby chair, hands trembling. Everything I had been denied, questioned for, shamed over it, lived here now. Preserved, protected, honored. That night, I didn't return to Grandma's. I unrolled a sleeping bag beside the central workbench, surrounded by my thoughts, my tools, and the ghost of someone who had always seen me. Within 2 weeks, the annex came alive. I reached out to Tara and Micah, 2 grad school friends who had both burned out from the performative nature of academic labs. They said yes before I could finish the pitch. Tara was a microbiologist obsessed with fungal ecosystems. Micah specialized in sustainable crop modeling. We didn't have much money yet, but we had ideas, passion, and a place to make noise. We started with a grant proposal for micro-irrigation research tailored to southern drought regions. Then, a pilot program with a regional farming co-op testing sustainable crop rotations. It was messy, frustrating, and exhausting. We blew circuits. We crashed a 3D printer. We argued over nutrient ratios and budget limits. But we kept showing up every single day. One Friday night, after our second grant rejection in a week, I stayed behind while Tara and Micah went out for drinks. I sat on the floor with papers fanned around me, the hum of the annex soft in the background. Somewhere between the sorrow and the silence, I pulled out Grandpa's letter. "You wrote your role." I read the words again and again. Not just encouragement, instruction. I looked around at the empty lab. The silence wasn't lonely anymore. It was sacred. That night, I started writing a new proposal, not for tech, but for people. A youth science program in rural schools. I called it the Little Scientist Initiative. Our first cohort had 12 students, most from towns where no one brought microscopes to class. We gave them lab notebooks, replicas of mine with Grandpa's quote stamped inside. Write the things they don't understand. One day the world will. Some kids were shy. Some were bold. Some had never seen a field kit before. But when they held their notebooks, their faces changed. They lit up. They asked questions. One girl, Amber, barely 13, showed me pages of bee behavior studies she'd done alone. Her math was clumsy. Her spelling is wild. But her mind? Brilliant. "You read it?" she asked, eyes wide. "Of course," I said. "And I hope you write more." She stared at me like I'd handed her a planet. 3 years after the will reading, the email came. Subject line: "Request for visit Claire Whitman, Innovation and Exit," was from a law firm representing Vanessa. I froze. My first instinct was to assume the worst. Legal challenge? Estate appeal? Another attempt to take what was mine. But the message was simple. She wanted to visit. I didn't reply right away. When she finally arrived 2 weeks later, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone were the stilettos and designer jackets. She wore no makeup, a navy coat too big for her frame. Her eyes looked tired but clear. I stood beside Grandpa's portrait above the reception desk. She stopped when she saw it. He always knew who you were, she said quietly, even when I didn't. Especially when I didn't. I said nothing. I didn't need to. "I want to see it," she added. "The work, the lab, what you built." I could have said no. Part of me wanted to, but I didn't. I led her through every room. The soil labs, the crop modeling areas, the greenhouse complexes. She asked gentle questions, honest ones. She didn't gawk. She didn't scoff. When we reached a community garden, families planting using our techniques, kids running with seed kits, she stopped. Her voice trembled. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see what he built for you, and what you built with it." We stood in silence. No apologies, no justifications, just the truth. She visits twice a year now, volunteering at our science camp. The kids call her Coach V. She teaches presentation skills, how to own a stage, how to explain ideas without fear. At the end of one summer, she handed me a folder. "It's a communication guide for shy kids," she said. "Figured it might help." I opened it that night, imperfect but thoughtful. And for the first time, I saw a version of Vanessa that didn't scare me. She never apologized with words, but she shows up, and maybe for us that's enough. The sun was dipping below the horizon as Vanessa and I stood at the threshold of the annex. For a long moment, we didn't speak. The weight of years of accusations and betrayals hovered between us like humidity before a storm. Then she turned to me, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "Thank you," she said. I nodded but didn't smile. Trust wasn't a light switch. It was a series of tiny steps, and this was just the first. Vanessa didn't stay long that night. But when she left, it wasn't with the slam of a car door or an angry screech of tires. Just a quiet click and the tail lights fading into dusk. Weeks passed. Fall crept in with gold-tipped trees and sharp morning air. We stayed busy. Tara and Micah took on new projects. I got invited to speak at a university panel. We submitted another grant proposal. Grandma started forgetting names more often, but never mind. She never forgot my name. Vanessa kept coming back. Not every day, not even every week, but enough. Once, she brought a tray of cupcakes for the student volunteers. Another time, she helped organize data samples, and then came the letter. Mr. Keen called again. "You should come to the office," he said. "It's about a clause in your grandfather's original estate plan, one that was never activated." My stomach twisted. When I arrived, he handed me a sealed envelope. Familiar handwriting. My grandfather's. This was to be delivered only if Vanessa came to the annex more than 5 times in 1 year, Mr. Keen explained. "It seems we've crossed that threshold." I opened it with shaking hands. "To Claire and Vanessa, if you're reading this, then something has shifted. Maybe there is hope. I know I left you 2 very different gifts, not out of favoritism but function. Claire, you needed space. Vanessa, you needed reflection. If you've found your way to each other, even for a moment, then you deserve this. The last portion of my shares in Whitman Innovations to be co-managed equally. Use it to fund your legacy, together or apart. But remember, legacy is not what you build alone. It's what you pass on." Walter, I sat there stunned. Vanessa, silent beside me, read it 3 times. When she finally looked up, her voice was quiet. "We could start a fellowship for young scientists, especially ones who never got seen." My throat tightened. "You mean that?" She nodded. "I don't want to be the villain anymore." That winter, the Whitman Sisters Fellowship was launched. We started with 5 students from underserved communities, 5 kids who had never held a pipette, who thought microscopes belonged in television shows, not classrooms. They came alive under the fluorescent lights of the annex, and somewhere along the way, so did we. Years passed. Grandma passed peacefully the next spring. We buried her beneath the magnolia trees she once tended with silent grace. Vanessa delivered the eulogy. Her voice shook, but she never faltered. Afterwards, she placed a bouquet of Sunti roses on the grave, a nod to the afternoons we both remembered. I still live at the annex. The main house is now a community center. Vanessa visits often, sometimes with a new batch of fellows, sometimes just to sit under the oak tree. The wind still carries secrets here, but now they feel less like burdens and more like stories waiting to be told. One evening, a little girl named Ava from the new class tugged my sleeve. "Miss Claire," she said, "why did your grandpa believe in you so much?" I smiled. "Because I asked questions, and I didn't stop when people stopped listening." She grinned. "Me too." And in that moment, I saw it all clearly. The map, the legacy, the love wrapped not in inheritance or wealth, but in space to become. To begin again.